Hey, how you doing? Justin here. It's time to check out major scale pattern 2. Or is it? I want to remind you at this point, it's super important that you can make music with pattern 1 before you even think about learning pattern 2. They're essentially the same notes, so learning pattern 2 isn't going to give you anything more if you can't handle playing music or making music in pattern 1. You want to be spending your time working on your reactive listening, memorizing the scale shape, using the one-finger solos, all of those tools we've looked at so far in this course. You need to really make sure you're confident and comfortable with making up a solo before you move on to learning new patterns. Okay, all it's going to do is mean that you get better at playing patterns that you can't make music with. And that's not the point here. I really want to emphasize the importance of making music. Just so we're totally clear on the differences between pattern 1 and pattern 2, let's just have a little look at them. Starting off with pattern 1. We just play down from the root note here. And then we do the same thing. It's exactly the same. Can you hear that? It's a different part of the neck, but it's essentially the same notes. As you hopefully remember from pattern 1, we always start and end on the lowest root note. And in pattern 2, the lowest root note is on the 4th string. Now, a lot of people kind of freak out over that. It's like, oh my God, don't know the notes on the 4th string. I mean, you should learn the notes on the 4th string. Ideally, by this stage of your guitar journey, you want to be learning, maybe not learned already, but learning all of the notes on the fretboard. It's like guitar's this funny instrument where people feel like they can get away with not knowing what the notes are. On pretty much every other instrument, you need to know what all the notes are. It would be, still a beginner skill learning what the notes are. On guitar, we seem to cheat our way through that. But look, this is the note G, and this is on the 4th string. Now, if we play up G major scale, I'm going to take you through it real slow. That was the highest note that we had there in pattern 1. But we're adding 2 notes further along. Okay, so if we started here on the root note before in pattern 1, that was as far as we could get up, the note A. In pattern 2, we've got an additional 2 notes. Back down. But this is the lowest note we can get in position here, which is the note A. There would be the root note. So of course you could shift down onto it if you want, but if we're staying in position, if we want to start and finish on our root note, the lowest root note we've got there is on the 4th string. Now, if you're one of those people that's finding that a little bit difficult, there's a nice easy little cheat for it. Hopefully you remember your E-shaped bar chord. Well, there was the root note for pattern 1. Well, little finger is where the root note would be for pattern 2. Okay, so we put our second finger on that note. You just have to think there's the chord, there's the octave of the low root. Put your second finger on it, and that's where we're going to start. Now, just like we did with pattern 1, I think it can be really helpful to learn these scales in little chunks. So let's go through and just check them out in little groups at a time to help you remember the sequence. Again, the key thing, I can't stress it enough, is making sure you get it right when you first start learning the scale. Don't learn it wrong and have to correct it later. Do it really painfully slowly. Even if you just are like, yeah, he's going too slow, I'm going to speed up. Just make sure you get all the notes right. Every time you make a mistake, it's going to make it slower to learn the scale. And I still find little mistakes I made years ago pop up from time to time. They're hidden in there, even though the code's there and I've crossed it out. It still pops up. So just really try not to make any mistakes at all. Okay, let's get to that close up and have a look at a lot of detail on how to play pattern 2. So as I said, we're starting with the second finger on the 5th fret of the 4th string. This is the note G. Now what's really interesting here and what makes it kind of easy is the pattern 2, 4, 1, 2, 4 is the same pattern that we started off with in pattern 1. So I'm kind of hoping that your fingers are going to be pretty hip with that already. Second finger, 4th finger, 1st, 2nd, 4th. Just the same as we had in pattern 1. When we started the scale. Now, interestingly here, we move up now. When we go on to string 2, first finger is moving up into the 5th fret. So first finger's in the 4th fret, and now we've got to bunch it up. First finger is going down in the 5th fret. And again, we've got the same pattern that we had on pattern 1 of fingers 1, 3, 4, So far we've got 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4. Exactly the same as we had in pattern 1. 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4. Okay, sounds a little different now. Because we're an octave higher, but it's essentially the same pattern, except for first finger has jumped up when we move on to the second string. That's the key thing. Same pattern, first finger is going to jump up. Then work on your way back down again. 4, 3, 1, 4, 3, 1, 4, 2, 1, 4, 2. So I would recommend, before you go any further, making sure that you've got this part of the scale nice and solid first of all. Because it's the same fingering as pattern 1, I'm hoping it feels nice under your fingers. It should be relatively easy to learn. You just have to remember to move that first finger up 1 fret when you move on to the second string. Now the fun really begins with this scale when we move a little bit further down, and there's this weird thing where we're going to swap the fingers that play an individual note, which is a pretty weird idea, but I'll give you, I think, good enough reason to spend the time learning to do this. It's something I learned from my teacher John McMillan. When I was first getting into all of this major scale stuff, he explained the concept to me. I practiced it a lot, really feels comfortable. It's not common, it's not the most common approach, but I think it works really well. So let's discuss what's going on there now. Okay, that's the lower part of this scale. Second finger, first finger. Now again, just like we had when we did pattern 1, when we came down right to the lowest note that we could in pattern 1, we actually had this pattern 4, 2, 1, 4, 2, 1, and that's the same as we've got here. Now we're going to have little finger down on the 7th fret of the 5th string, and then first finger on the 5th fret. So we got the first finger and the little finger only 2 frets apart, a little bit unusual. 4, 1. Now first finger is in the nice position to have 4, 3, 1 on the 8th fret, 7th fret, 5th fret. So from the root note, and again you should be doing this really slowly. I'm kind of going through it a bit faster than I probably should for your lesson here, but this is the key thing here. Second finger, first finger, little finger, first finger. I would practice that up a little bit first. Get used to that motion, then work on getting down the rest of the scale. 8th fret, 7th fret, 5th fret. Give it a few goes at that. Little finger, first finger. When you hit, you're going to go back up. But going back up, we're going to use our third finger on that note. Then stretch back with the first finger and onto the second finger. So second finger, first finger, little finger, first finger, little finger, third, first, third finger, step back, first, second. Now let's talk a little bit about the reason for this. So when we're descending the scale, you can see little finger is just already in position to play that note. If we go like that, did you hear what happened? First finger wants to pull down a little bit because stretching up with the third finger to there is just weird. It's kind of feeling odd in the back of my hand. Little finger's ready to go. There. Squashing the first finger up is no trouble either. It's not, it's not too difficult. The finger's already in position. Now when we come back up, we could use little finger there. And I would kind of recommend trying little finger there and stepping back. There's definitely nothing wrong with that as a fingering choice. However, if we're going here and we use the third finger, it's actually not very difficult at all to stretch back with the first finger. It feels very comfortable, and doing this feels then cramped. It doesn't feel cramped going this way, because little finger's kind of already off looking for here. Whereas here, it just feels really nice. Now, it's completely your decision what fingering you use on that 5th string for pattern 2. I think the swapping the fingers thing over works really well. It feels comfortable. It might feel a little bit odd to start off with if you've learned a different one. If you've learned a different one and you feel comfortable with it and you don't see any benefit from doing this, stick with the fingering that you've learned already. Okay, I don't think it's that beneficial. But if you're learning it for the first time, I think it's a pretty hip thing to learn how to swap the fingers just on that one note when you're descending and then ascending the pattern. Now, really key things here are practicing it really slowly, as we've talked about before, making sure you get every note right. I would strongly recommend, just as we talked about with pattern 1, using all down picks till you've got the scale pattern 100% correct. At that point, you've got it correct. You could put it with a metronome, but really slowly, like one note per metronome click at, say, 60. So this kind of thing. Really, still just all down picks, making sure you got it right. Spending a lot more time thinking about the fretting hand. Let the picking hand just do all downs because that'll get you through. Once you're confident with the scale and you can play it up and down, then think about still doing it real slow, but adding the alternate picking. So down, up, down, till you get all of the way up and down and back. So with the scale, remember at this point now we're going to play from the lowest root note. On the 4th string, we're going to play up as far as we can go. Then we're going to turn straight back around, go as low as we can go, and back up to the root note. Probably the biggest hassle that most people find with learning pattern 2 is finding the root note, finding that starting note on the 4th string, because most people, including me, when you got to the point of learning this, haven't really learned the notes on the neck as well as we probably should have, and therefore finding it is a little bit uncomfortable. You definitely want to look for the octave shape. So if I'm here, I'm just thinking back 2 frets and down 2 strings, and there's the root note, because most of us know the notes on the thicker string from our E-shaped bar chord. So if I'm looking for a C major scale in pattern 2, I might think, well, there's my C chord, there's the root, there's the scale. I might not have to go through all of that. I'm just kind of looking with my eyes and going, well, there's the C, there's the root note that I know from this chord, so I'm going to look down 2 strings and up 2 frets, and then I'm off. I would recommend that you spend now at least a week just working on pattern 2. That is in the part of your practice routine which is devoted to practicing your scales. You want to spend some time just figuring out the fingering. Is the fingering I'm suggesting going to work for you? If not, what is going to be the fingering that you're going to practice? And then just work on pattern 2, nice and slowly, all down picks, make sure you got the fingering right, eventually moving to alternate picking, then eventually moving it into practicing it with the metronome. First 1 note per click, then 2 notes per click, maybe even up to 4 notes per click, depending on where your chops are and your picking and the synchronization between your hands, all of that sort of stuff. But just work on pattern 2 for a little while. When you feel confident and comfortable with that pattern, then maybe alternate days. So you'll spend one day just working on pattern 2, another day just working on pattern 1, eventually leading to spending half of your practice slot on pattern 1 and then pattern 2 and pattern 3 and 4 and 5 as we learn those extra patterns. But really, really important that you get pattern 2 nice and firmly into your musical imagination, the visual pattern of the scale clear in your mind. Now the next part of Unit 3 we're going to be looking at combining pattern 1 and pattern 2, mostly in an improvised sense. So I really hope you'll join me for that. I'll see you for plenty more very soon. You'll take care of yourselves. Bye bye.